Hello, and welcome to The Alt Left.
Welcome everyone to the live broadcast of The Alt Left. This is our second attempt, but our first success at pulling it off. Last time just ended up to 5 people doing fart jokes on
Discord.
Bro. Boy, I'm doing great tonight. This is a great night to go live. My brain is fried. I literally finished my last final tonight, and I'm moving
this morning,
tomorrow.
not tonight.
Today, this afternoon. I submitted it at 3. That's PM. It's post-meridian.
And anyone watching us is going to understand exactly why Kay is an editing god.
Yeah, they're gonna get they're getting me at my absolute worst right now, and they are getting us without the magical quantum touch of the good Reverend Dr. K.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. We'll do my best.
Hey,
later.
Use that word around me. I got a reputation to keep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, F off.
Yeah.
That's more like it.
He is no man. He is no man.
He's something. Anyway, so yeah, we're doing this. I am loving to see if the response we're getting. Luckily, if anybody's not hearing this live, when they hear it, they're actually going to get a slightly edited version. So when there's, several seconds of pause, Kay will be able to edit that out.
That's actually something we should probably mention regularly for anybody listening right now, because I know there's at least a few. There is a bit of a delay on this, so what you're hearing is actually about 30 seconds behind what we're actually saying. So if anybody's going to be commenting, leaving us questions, we're not going to get to them right away, especially if we're, talking and addressing other things in the meantime. So just be patient with us. As we see questions pop up, then we will absolutely be addressing them.
Yeah, and that way, if when I start threatening politicians with the guillotine, I can edit that out before we become criminally liable for it.
Why would we want to edit that out?
I think threatening politicians with a guillotine is probably a good idea, actually.
Yeah.
I'm
just saying, if we did it more, we might have better politicians.
I got to tell you, I'm a big fan of the French, how even today when they protest, they still wheel out guillotines.
They literally wheel out guillotines. It's not like an effigy. They literally bring out a guillotine.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, 100%.
And by the way, anybody who is actually watching this, I don't know what the number is, Matt. I think you're the only one who can tell. Feel free to type in the comments because we will see them and we will answer you and be part of the convo.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is basically our live episode. We're going to be touching on a few topics, as you've seen in some of our promotion posts. We'll be hitting all those, a few extra ones, but we absolutely have no problem answering any questions you guys might have.
In fact, we prefer it, honestly. Anyone wants to interrupt me with a topical question, I would love to chat. The one bonus content we did where we actually answered everyone's questions, that was great. Everyone still sent them in. That was a ton of fun, and I would love to do that again.
Absolutely, 100%. We got about 5 people watching right now, so
that's a new record. I knew Mom would get her friends in. So Mary Riley's got a question for Matt. Has anyone ever told you kind of sound like Charlie from It's Always Sunny? Yes, but Charlie's a better person.
Wow, I think that's setting the bar pretty low.
I've actually never seen It's Always Sunny, but isn't he the guy that was also in Pacific Rim?
Yes, yes it is.
Okay, nobody has ever told me that, but funny enough, there have been a few people that say I also kind of look like him.
You're too tall.
Yeah, I don't think you do.
Don't get me wrong, you're both short, but Charlie is actually a short guy, whereas you guys are actually average adult height. And yes, Mary, Sunny is a fantastic show. I love it. It is a show about a group of terrible people doing terrible shit. And it's it's like, what if Seinfeld was good? That's Always Sunny.
It's actually one of those shows that I enjoy simply because it isn't anything that it doesn't pretend to be. And what I mean by that is shows like Seinfeld pretended to be good, and they were just awful. And this show recognizes the fact that the 3 or 4 people that are the showrunners are just awful people. And that's cool. I like that.
Yeah, it's great. It's a dark sense of humor. And yeah, Charlie's a short king. He's responsible for one of my favorite memes of all time, where he's doing the crazy thing in front of the board with the red string, and it's always like, me going into my Skyrim lore. I love that Charlie meme. Anyway, thank you, Mary. Yeah, I agree. He has that, and it's funny. There's a very specific type of voice. I used to be friends with this guy named Mike, and he had that same. It's like there's this certain rasp, this certain scratch. He's like a deeper version of Charlie, but there is that one type of male voice that has that gravel to it, and you either become a political commentator, a comedian, or a death metal singer.
And I can't sing for shit. I'm not funny at all, so here we are.
So there's a it's funny. One of the reasons we did this, right? There's not really a big thing we need to talk about that we're ready for. This is the good time to break out our first live show. Let's just chat, and then all of a sudden, of course, a whole bunch of shit has gone down in the last 10 days.
Oh yeah,
all kinds of stuff.
The one of the first ones, but I mean, we're going to get into stuff like Israel, Palestine, and police brutality. But one of the things that's really, really took my breath away, and it shouldn't have. I totally pulled a liberal there, but it took my breath away. The CDC advises we don't have to wear masks anymore if we're vaccinated.
This was a great idea that the CDC had. I'm in full support.
You need to get better about sounding sarcastic.
You know what? You're right. I do. I apologize. No, I honestly, I think this was the worst thing that they could have done. It was irresponsible at best. All it does is give people that don't want to get vaccinated, don't believe in COVID, more power.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, it's like, no matter what, if Americans weren't Americans, right? Let's just say this was happening in New Zealand. Even then, the science still isn't that great that we should be not having masks. But even then, you might be able to excuse it. But when you look at the trash that America has been through this pandemic, to literally give all of these fucking anti-maskers a pass to be like, nope, I'm vaccinated. Yep, you can't prove it. It's all you've done is make it easier for people to not get a vaccine, suffer no consequences from it, and just spread disease. This decision has done nothing but make it easier for more people to die.
But Chris,
the economy, hurt economy, money back to work.
Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong. I think a lot of the people were not going to wear a mask anyway. It's not like I think this is going to add 1 million deaths or anything.
No,
but
I don't think so either.
I expect this kind of trash from capitalists and from Trumpsters. I don't expect it from the CDC. I expect better from the CDC.
What I feel like the CDC was doing is they want so badly to get to that 70% for herd immunity that they were like, oh, this is a great idea. We should encourage people to get vaccinated by telling them if they are, then they don't need to wear a mask. That's what it feels like to me. And
Jackie makes
really,
a good point here, where she says the anti-vaxxers would never lie about being vaccinated. That is true. The anti-vaxxers wouldn't. I agree with you, Jacqueline. But the Trumpsters would.
100%.
Absolutely.
Without a second thought,
Yeah, the people who are, the absolute anti-vaxxers who are sitting there going, nope, I don't like anything that has chemicals because chemistry doesn't exist and everything else I do. Those people, yes, you're right. They're going to hop on their nut job jade egg vaginas and just tweet about bullshit all day long and be idiots. But the other side of the idiot coin is the Trumpsters. It's the same people who are like, I have a disability.
The COVID deniers.
Yeah, I mean, not even the COVID deniers, like literally the Karens who sat there and said, I've got a disability, I don't have to wear a mask. Like, those people are not even pro-disability. Those people typically are like social Darwinists and pull yourself up by your bootstraps and no participation trophies. And then all of a sudden, the second it's convenient for them to be like, oh, I'm disabled, they'll jump on that. And it's the same thing. They're going to talk shit about the vaccine. And the second they cannot wear a mask, they're going to just immediately vaccinated
people, which drives me fucking crazy because that's a whole nother like asshole move to identify as vaccinated. It's ridiculous.
Well, personally, if you want the people who are refusing to get vaccinated, all they would have to do, and again, this would require a little bit of participation, but I think they'd be on board. all you need to do is get like AOC, Ilhan Omar, Joe Biden, and Nancy Pelosi to all make a giant statement that the vaccine was a terrible idea and it's awful and it was Trump's idea, and getting vaccinated just brings glory to Trump, and so Democrats should never do it. If you're an American, you won't get a vaccine. If you don't have a vaccine, you're with us. And you would just see this fucking red hat flood into Rite Aid.
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, it really is, because it's not about logic or reason or even really taking any kind of real stand about the vaccine or anything. It's just about doing what Trump says, and Trump says don't do what the Democrats say.
Yep.
It's like we were talking about before. He owns the party now. Whatever you think about him, I don't care if you hate him, love him, neutral, don't care. Facts are facts. Trump owns the Republican Party. He is now going to be the driving force of the direction for that party from now going forward till the foreseeable future.
Which is super unfortunate, but it's the way it is. Hey, I got a question for you guys about the vaccination.
42.
How do you guys? No, that's the meaning to life.
That's 47, actually.
No, it's 42.
You fail life nerd math with whales and potted plants.
I apologize.
Unless I'm wrong, I'm going to laugh if someone corrects us and it is 42.
I'm pretty
Go
It is
ahead.
42.
Sorry,
Actually,
All
Kay was right. It is 42.
Kay,
So-
I fail at nerd whale math.
Wow. All right. So, how do you guys feel about Ohio and their Vax a Million? So, basically, they've set up a contest or a lottery that if you are vaccinated, you could potentially win $1 million from the state.
I am on board with it. I think it's sad that we need it, but I'm okay with it. You know, it shouldn't have to exist. I'm sad we live in a world that unemployment insurance needs to be a thing. We shouldn't need unemployment insurance. Our needs to survive should already be taken care of by the state. But since it's not, and we live in a terrifying, darkest timeline, I'm okay with $1 million lottery just to get more fucking idiots in the door and get vaccinated.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same vein. Like, we're in the middle of a pandemic. People need to fucking get vaccinated. If this is one tool we're using to get them in there to do it, but I think Jacqueline just brought up a good point. It's going to be 5 people. That's just 5 people, and
5
it may not
million
even be 5 people that. Well, and that's just it. It may not even be 5 people that wouldn't have gotten vaccinated otherwise.
Yeah.
Like
Let's just hand out a $100 bill to every new vaccine at this point.
Well, okay.
Come get vaccinated, you get a $100 bill.
So the population of Ohio is $11.69 million. With $5 million, they could literally give everybody $400 and still have money left over.
Good point.
Yeah, there you
You
go.
and Jacqueline are onto something.
Yep.
I mean, here in the state of California, we have another thing going on where apparently we're going to get some more money from our state because we have a whole lot of extra money.
Oh, damn,
Anybody?
Mary, that's actually really cool. And yes, I agree. California Governor Gavin Newsom is going to use the massive surplus we have because, liberals don't know how to run economies and it's becoming a hellhole and we're all in debt and we have no money. But beyond that, the billions of dollars we have extra.
Yeah, what was it, $79 billion or something?
Yeah, something like that.
Ridiculous number.
Our governor also opened up the state funds to get PPE to other states. Like, we literally leveraged this with our economy. Like, we have done nothing but shell out cash and we're still sitting pretty, which is why taxes are a good thing.
Mm-hmm. But wait a minute. California has the highest homeless population. You guys are going to hell.
It absolutely does. And that's 2 reasons for that. Number 1, we have great weather.
Yep.
And number 2, and the big reason, is we have more empty homes than homeless people. Our homeless problem is not that there's too many homeless people. Our homeless problem is that we are refusing to house them. We have a couple of laws on the books. Number 1, if you buy a home and flip it within 3 years, you don't pay any taxes on that increased profit, or just profit, sorry. But with that increased equity, you gain a profit. You don't have to pay taxes on that amount. And that increases the amount of people wanting to buy up homes, increase their value, and resell them. And so what you have is a higher median home value. Secondly, and more importantly, once you buy a home, you don't have to pay taxes past that date. You buy a house and 40 years later, you're paying the same income tax level, which is a crime. It came through in the 70s. It was the stupidest law that was ever made. And then it, of course, forced California to jack up the property taxes on new homes, which only hurts young, struggling families who are trying to get into a home. Meanwhile, companies, corporations, and wealthy people can own estates generationally. and not pay any taxes on them.
Well,
and so
the taxes don't increase except unless there's an assessment done or the home is financed or
transferred.
Sold.
Yeah, exactly. But if you just hang on to it, keep it as a rental property, whatever, you can literally pass it down to your grandkids, and they'll have to pay $18 and one beaver pelt, well, and that's it.
I agree with you. I just want to be specific about it.
Yeah, and so the big thing is what that has done is created an unattainable market. There is almost no construction for cheap housing and tenant units. And there is nothing but, more homes are owned by people who live outside of California and in the United States than people who live in the States. Did you know that? Yep. This is the number one real estate investment site in the country. Our homes are owned by foreign investors and then given to rental companies to rent out. And there's entire tracts of suburban housing that this is done, and it's to keep rental going. It is cheaper to buy a house than it is to rent an apartment. Your average mortgage payment is lower than a 3-bedroom apartment. But the problem is, if you're poor, you don't have 60 grand to put down on a house to get an FHA loan.
Yep.
And so that barrier of having that surplus capital keeps the poor paying more money in the long run, because once you own a home, you buy a house and you pay a mortgage every month, that money you're putting in, that you're paying yourself, it's your equity. You can liquidate that property anytime, sell it, and get back all of that money you have been dumping into that investment. Whereas when you have an apartment or you rent a house, or if you are paying somebody else to live in their property, you are paying for their equity. You get none of that. When you leave, you get none of that money. You have paid money all year long and you get nothing back because you've been paying for the service of living there. Whereas if you own and you make a mortgage payment every month, you get that money back. So we have a systematic barrier placed intentionally. That 10-20% isn't there because you need it or because it's better for anything. It's there to keep the poor from owning houses and to keep the working class subservient to landowners. And so that's a big investment here in California. So you combine these things of the problem of renting and owning, additionally to the California property tax laws and flipping laws, and you have the perfect storm to have a handful of rich people owning all the homes, jacking up the prices, and driving people into the streets. It's forced scarcity. It's kind of like during the Great Depression. Farmers were literally destroying eggs and pouring milk down into sewer gutters because even though people were starving to death, they had to do that because if they flooded the market, the price would go down. They could not afford to keep their farm. And it's the same thing, is they would rather have vacant homes and huge numbers of homeless people because it is still more profitable to then keep the people who can afford it in there indefinitely. And speaking of, Gavin, to answer your question, Jacqueline, Caitlyn Jenner sucks. I do not have a problem with Caitlyn Jenner as a trans woman. That's fantastic. Trans women are women, and I am all for that. And I would love to have a woman governor, cis or trans. It matters not to me. But Caitlyn Jenner's a trash person who killed somebody and has awful politics, loves Donald Trump, doesn't even understand what the governor does. So, no. Caitlyn Jenner running, she's ridiculous and she's awful. And she's honestly a dumber version of Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah, and one of the common things, like I think I mentioned this on a previous podcast, but I see a lot of like people that just can't critically think. Well, you're the leftist. Shouldn't you love trans people? Yes, we do like trans people. There is no conflict to say Caitlyn Jenner is a woman and we should absolutely use her pronouns and respect her as a woman, and also say she's a shitty politician and a shitty person and she sucks and doesn't deserve to be voted for. Like, those two things aren't in conflict. Like, just vote people just because they're trans or gay or black or whatever. We care about policy.
Yeah. So Kay, what nation of origin does your family hail from?
Predominantly German, French, English.
So I like you, but mostly the Krauts, right?
Sure, if you want to go with that word. Yes, predominantly German.
But that would be like saying, well, because Chris is a communist, that means his mortal enemy are Nazis. And there was a few of them in Germany for a while. And so therefore I either have to hate Kay or love Hitler. And there's no nuance. Like, no, Hitler was bad. Kay is amazing. And the German people are good people.
Yeah, it can be both.
Yeah, I'm three-quarters British. Boy, did we have a bad history.
Yeah, I mean, we can respect Caitlyn Jenner as a trans woman and still think that she is a garbage person and that she would not be good for our state.
100%. I mean, Lindsey Graham is a gay man and he's trash, but I love gay men. And Mary Riley, you have a very good point. I also find it hilarious that Caitlyn Jenner is an out trans woman and is also a TERF. It's ridiculous.
Right.
But it's a good example of what we're talking about. These things can exist simultaneously. It's completely possible.
There is no oppressed group without an Uncle Tom.
Right.
And, speaking about oppressed groups, I spent my early life railing against capitalism, and everyone thought I was crazy. And then all of a sudden, I spent the 2000s watching everyone suddenly turn socialistic and watching Gen Z come up. And I'm like, well, yay, welcome to the party. But now I just feel like a poser. Same kind of thing. Like, I have been pro-Palestine, anti-Israel forever. And all of a sudden, the world is finally with me, and I don't know how to feel about that anymore. Like, I always wonder if
you were right in advance.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like, Zach De La Rocha from Rage Against the Machine, they finally break up and then Bush gets in office and he just kind of went around going, see?
Yeah.
I told you.
Honestly, I think you should feel vindicated because the world as a whole is waking up to this idea that Israel has kind of become the person they were, the group they were trying to run away from. Like, they're very much taking pages right out of the Nazi playbook, in my opinion.
Kind of. I mean, it's a little different. I am always hesitant to call it a genocide because if it was a genocide, that would be, if we were going to compare it to the Nazi genocide, that would be Israel launching a mass murder campaign globally against all Arabs. And that is not what this is.
Fair.
This has nothing to do with Israelis hating all Arabs and wanting all of them to go away, which I'm sure some do, just like there's some Arabs who want all Jews to die. I mean, you can find assholes in any group. The problem is that they want the Palestinians to go away. So it's not really a genocide, but it is an ethnic cleansing. I've been talking to a lot of friends about it, and people make that analogy of Nazi Germany. And I say I find it far more, not to make it any better, but I think, when you say that, it gets a little hyperbolic, and I'm fine with using the word Nazi and calling people Nazis when they're Nazis. But I'm very against calling them that when they're not, because then the Nazi comparison loses value. People called Bush Sr. Bush Jr. Hitler. It's like, no, Bush Jr. was fucking, Barney Fife, who was controlled by Dick Cheney.
IQ of like 95. We were not dealing
generous
with a genius here.
Yeah, exactly. Again, Hitler wasn't a genius either, but he could at least tie his own shoes and could put a council together, which Bush couldn't do. So to compare him to that, it lost. Because then when someone like Trump shows up and you're like, oh, an actual fascist, that's something we should deal with. And again, even I don't think Hitler's a good comparison for Trump. I think he's far more like Mussolini, if you ask me. But we're off topic. The point is, the analogy I would use for the Israeli-Palestine conflict is Israel is carrying forth the same type of ethnic cleansing and land theft that the United States did during the Manifest Destiny towards the American Indians. That's what it feels like to me.
Fair. I mean, that's fair. We're talking about like nuance when it comes to horrible murder and rape and just general awfulness.
Absolutely.
But I think you have a fair point. Those distinctions do need to be made. But
it's still legal sentiments, and it's still an ethnic cleansing, and it needs to be addressed as such. And this idea of both sides of, both sides should stop. And it's like, well, first of all, we're funding only one side of this, number one.
Well, and one side is disproportionately murdering children, disproportionately taking the rights away of the people they're I don't even know what the oppressing. There we go. That's the word.
To be fair, though, Palestine did destroy the children's hospital in Israel and cut off power to half the nation for... Oh, wait, no, that was Israel. Sorry, never mind. That's what Israel did to Palestine. They blew up a children's hospital and continually cut off supplies like food, power, and water to gigantic numbers of civilians.
Yeah. And that's kind of, I think, where this gets lost is I think anybody that understands this conflict, none of them are going to sit here and say Palestine is innocent in this, but we're talking about who has the power, who is like, it matters in this case, who's the bigger oppressor, who's committing more atrocities.
I will actually make that statement that Palestine is innocent.
Really?
And here's why. Yes. Now, am I going to say that Palestine has never caused any aggression? Of course not. They helped start 2 wars with Israel, and they do rocket attacks. But So what? I mean, anybody remember the 80s movie Red Dawn?
Yeah, of course I do.
Yes.
Then how can we root for the Wolverines and not root for Palestine? Like, it's the same thing. Israel is a foreign colonial invasion force, and any attacks against them do not make Palestine guilty. You are allowed to defend your homeland, and some people will say that Jews have a cultural claim to the land of Jerusalem, and I would say that is correct. They do. So do Christians. So do Muslims. Like, there are three major religions. I mean, if you really want to go back far, we can do some other Arab religions like Zoroastrianism. But the point is, the three major Abrahamic religions all have valid claims to Jerusalem. And before the British came and fucked everything up, Jews, Christians, and Muslims lived in peace in Jerusalem. It was kind of considered this free-for-all city that no one really owned, and it was the Holy Lands. That's what it was. And then, unfortunately, the Ottoman Empire was super anti-Semitic, kicked all the Jews out, and then what was left was the non-Jews, the Palestinians, who had also lived there for countless generations. They wanted their independence from Britain. And then as they got their independence from Britain, Britain was like, oh, and by the way, who are European Jews.
Okay, hold on. Time out. Is anybody else getting some?
Yeah, Chris,
really, your audio is getting awful, buddy.
I might be having an internet connection issue.
I'm just, you know what? Justin Randall is our good friend from the Left You Were Warned About Facebook group. Just joined, and I'm going to blame it on him. This is all his fault.
Justin sabotages. How do I sound now?
Terrible. All right, everyone. Chris is going to try and fix his issues that were caused by Justin. Justin, thank you for giving us a shout out and coming on in. It's good to be engaging with all you guys live. Right now, you came in the middle of our Israeli-Palestinian discussion and kind of getting the gist of where we all stand. Surprise, surprise, most of us are pro-Palestine here, and we're just kind of discussing the differences between, like, you know, how... Oh, Chris, you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. You sound great now.
All right. Well, there we go. You want to pick up
Justin,
from where you
thanks
were at?
for letting Chris come back in. And
I appreciate it, buddy. I appreciate your service. Again, I'm sorry. I know we're going on a rant here, but basically the point is, to sum up, the Palestinians had this land. They have the same claim as any other ancestral people, except for the fact they're actually living there and were pushed out with violence to make way for a foreign colonial force. And then when they opposed that, they've been beaten back and had their land stolen for the last 80 years. And that's ridiculous. And it's a crime against humanity, and it shouldn't be allowed. And so therefore, it's kind of one of those, you know, if you're coming after someone, if I'm standing on the street and Matt, you're coming after me with a lead pipe, is there really anything I can do in defense that makes me just as guilty or even somewhat culpable? Like, aren't I allowed to do whatever it takes to resist death?
I mean, you are actually.
Yes. Now, but and I don't disagree with you.
I know, challenge me. Feel free. This is a nuanced topic.
I would say that if I'm coming at you with a lead pipe, and you knock me down, cut off my legs, sodomize me, and throw me in a ditch, you've gone a little bit extreme. And the reason I make it that extreme is because I think a lot of people would point to things the Palestinians have done, the terrorist acts Palestinians have committed against the Israelis that have caused the lives of innocents and children as well. I don't have anything specific off the top of my head. I know it's happened. I don't think it's happened anywhere near at the level that the Israelis have done to the Palestinians. And I think in most cases that I'm aware of, I think it's like collateral damage, not direct targeting, which is exactly what Israel is doing.
Yeah, and the thing is, you can't direct target. I mean, Palestine there has been some terrorist activity. Do not get me wrong. But then you have to go with, well, what's terrorism? Because is it terrorism if you're a freedom fighter for your own nation? If your nation has been invaded by foreign occupiers, again, going back to Red Dawn, the Wolverines, as far as the Russians were concerned, they were terrorists. As far as Americans are concerned, they're freedom fighters. So
all right,
Chris.
And I think that's a good point. Let's go ahead and time for the history lesson. Chris, you're up.
History. I just gave one.
Yeah, Justin wasn't here, so give the Cliffs Notes version so we can get the idea of what we're talking about.
Again, Justin was here for most of it. But yeah, it's basically after World War II, before World War II, there was a Zionist movement to return Jews to Israel. After World War II, the British owned the land of Palestine, and so they went in and killed a bunch of people and created a bunch of refugees and gave it to the Jewish people from Europe and emigrated them in. The Palestinians who lived there and had their own nation finally had a big problem with that. Launched a couple wars with allies like Egypt and, God, who was it? You know, I knew we were going to talk about this at some point. You'd think I would have been slightly prepared. Egypt and I forgot who the other country was. It wasn't Jordan, I don't think. Maybe it was Jordan. Anyway,
Jordan sounds right. Actually, I think you might have.
They launched two separate invasions of Israel. Lost both of them because Israel had very powerful backing from the U.S. and Britain. Ever since then, Israel basically after the Holy Days, the 3 Days War. Basically, they were attacked during the high holidays, which was tactically a brilliant move, ethically pretty messed up. But George Washington killed a bunch of people on Christmas, so what are you going to do? And that's war. It sucks. Ever since then, Israel has created a program of ethnic cleansing. They've gone full fascist. They've gone ultra-militaristic, ultra-nationalist. The political parties have swung hard right. It's hard to look at Netanyahu and not see the same thing as Donald Trump and Kim Jong-il.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. 100%.
And they have a border wall set up. They completely restrict utilities. They blow up hospitals. They blow up civilians constantly. And so what will happen is Hamas will send some rocket strikes into Israel. And these are rockets. They're not guided. They're just lobbing some shit over the wall. And Israel has a $10 quadrillion, Iron Dome defense system paid for by us. Intercepts every single rocket and then sends a bunch of tanks over and blows up hospitals. And they've taken out multiple apartment buildings on purpose. Like, oh, there's some terrorists in that apartment building, and they give people 5 minutes to get out, and then they blow up the building.
Yeah, that's what Jacqueline was mentioning too. And now they're targeting, centers where people that work for news and media coverage of these things are being targeted too.
Yeah, Israeli snipers at the wall keep getting caught sniping children in schoolyards on the Palestinian side. God, it was like 6-7 years ago. I can't remember to Google it. The Palestinian soccer team going to the World Cup for the first time in a long time were all stopped at the border by Israeli guards, and the IDF pulled them all out and shot them in the feet. That's what Israel is. Yeah. Israel is no longer a country defending themselves. They have always been an occupational foreign force, and they commit human atrocities. We just have a hard propaganda campaign to support them because they are allied in the Middle East. From Israel, we can strike at Iran, and that's always kind of been the goal.
Yeah, I mean, talk about terrorism. Like, if anything fits the definition, it's what Israel is doing.
Yep. No one can look at that objectively. The only argument against it is I like Jewish people. And don't get me wrong, as someone of Jewish descent, I also like Jewish people. But I can criticize Israel, and that is not me criticizing Judaism. Judaism is fantastic and wonderful and a beautiful culture and religion. Israel is a fascist state of occupying force that commits crimes against humanity against a civilian force. And that's
been the key to the propaganda campaign, hasn't it? It's been linking any criticism of Israel at all with anti-Semitism. That's been the crux of how this campaign has been. It's this weird thing of like being against Judaism in any way, shape, or form is now equated with being against Israel and vice versa. So to criticize one in any capacity gets you labeled as an anti-Semite. Yeah, it's happening even with movie stars right now. There's a bunch of like people, I think Gal Gadot came out and she was criticized as being an anti-Semite.
Gal Gadot's a war criminal, by the way.
Which is fine. Like, I mean, I'm not saying she's great or anything. Cool. But it's like she's come out in support of Palestine, I think. Another couple, like Gigi Hadid, maybe Bella. I don't know. I'm terrible with movie stars' names. But there's been a couple people that come out, and then like the state of Israel Twitter is just coming out and calling them anti-Semites, and don't support them, and it's crazy because that's the only argument they've got left. Like, the facts are out there now.
Israeli news sources are actually doxing reporters who report pro-Palestinian stories.
Yeah, but that's just it. The facts are out now. The tide is turning against them, as you mentioned before, Chris. People are waking up to the facts of this situation, and the only card they've got left to play, in my opinion, is, oh, you're anti-Semitic.
Yeah, which is a trash opinion, and they'll hold that up with saying, well, because Israel has the state religion of Judaism, they are linked. And it's like, well, I'm sorry. England has the state religion of Anglicanism, the Church of England. There is an actual a lot of people don't think about this. No. Protestantism, Anglicanism, the Church of England is the official state religion. The Queen of England is in charge of the country and the head of the church. And she still holds power there. And that would be like saying, well, if you criticize anything England does or the royal family does, you hate Jesus.
Yep.
What? And it's the most asinine argument ever.
Doesn't work. And Justin, to answer your question real quick. Yes, Chris was actually making that very comparison just before you came in, because one of the things I brought up was there are some similarities between what's happening in Israel and in Nazi Germany. And Chris was like, well, yes and no. And that's what you're saying here. And for anybody listening, Justin is asking if the comparison of what Israel is doing to Palestine is similar to what the U.S. was doing to Native Americans, and the answer to that is yes, as Chris suggested earlier. Yeah, that is the closest one-to-one comparison.
Yeah, it's a manifest destiny, ethnic cleansing. And by the way, Justin, I'd be willing to bet you're a lot like me. I don't know if you hate Jesus. Jesus was a brown-skinned Jew who was anti-war, anti-capitalism, anti-slut shaming, and pro being awesome and free and believed in free healthcare. I don't have a problem with Jesus. It's his fan club I don't like.
Well, I think a lot of part of this is that this particular conflict has been going on for hundreds, thousands of years, and people
the Arab-Jew conflict.
Well, the conflict over this area of land, right? Specifically now, Palestinians and Israel, and I think that people find it hard to separate the cultural background of a people and the religion that they currently practice. Correct. I think that is a part of what's going on here, specifically with the anti-Semitism.
No, I think you hit it on the head. I agree. But I'm an atheist. I have the same feeling towards Jesus as I do any other fictional character. So, it's hard for me to have that much of an emotional investment in a character that doesn't exist. That's my.
You know opinion. What? Me and Zeus are going to turn into geese and bang your whole family for saying that.
Cool, go for it. That's actually my favorite part. Like, I actually happen to have a really big love of mythology, especially like for any religions. And I love that most of the Greek and Roman stories start with some version of, well, Zeus was horny. And
everything got screwed up.
Yep, that's pretty much it.
Okay, you got to talk more. Justin thinks you fell asleep.
I did not fall asleep, Justin. Sometimes it's just hard to get a word in edgewise.
Yeah, especially when I get on a history soapbox. People do tend to fall unconscious, so I'm used to it.
Yeah,
I've learned to keep talking over the snoring.
When Chris and I get going, I think it's back and forth. Like we just start, like it's hard to get a word in edgewise between the two of us. So
I have a string of exes who can testify that I'm great for nap time. I'm better than sheep.
You should hear him read audiobooks. It's wonderful.
We're probably going to end up with, we actually had talked about doing a Palestine Israel podcast at some point. We will. It's something I wanted to do a lot more research into, so I didn't be like, oh, it was definitely Egypt, and I think Jordan, I don't know, Camp David Accords, Jimmy Carter, something, help. Like, I actually wanted to have my ducks in a row. But also, we're going to see some rapid changes happening in the next couple of months. There's just been, apparently, Israel has announced they will be adhering to a ceasefire coming up soon. Yep. So we may see this settle down, which is good because my personal prediction is if Israel goes too far and actually does wipe Palestine off the map, you are eventually going to see Iran park a nuke in Tel Aviv. That will happen.
Oh, yeah.
And we need to prevent that from happening. And part of that is going to have to be actually putting Israel in check. And it's not going to happen with Uncle Joe at the helm. But I'm hoping sometime in the next couple of decades, we can get any kind of progressives in office and maybe do something. But we'll see. Yeah. So we're not going to spend the whole day talking about that. But we wanted to mention it just so everyone knew it was on our radar. But we kind of want to wait till this calms down a bit, and then maybe we can do an actual episode on it when things aren't so in flux.
Yeah. As for now, as far as politicians goes, I think the best we've got so far is AOC introducing a bill to withhold the money we were going to give to them to Israel.
Yeah. For once, it's not Ilhan Omar, so we can be like, "See, she's Arab," and oh my god, just for fun, I signed in to our communism. I'm sorry, I am definitely on our communism, on our conservatives on Reddit, just because I was like, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to downvote stuff on the slide for fun. Well, it would be good to see the memes and see what's going to, because again, know thine enemy, right? Every once in a while I would tune into Fox News for an hour. And then after I was done throwing up, I'd change the channel. Know your enemy. And I literally couldn't take it. It was like, there was one post where someone's like, she commits incest. Like, oh, she marries her brother and did all this. Like, what the hell? There's an insane amount of Islamophobia thrown at Ilhan Omar just because she's a progressive, which is funny because if she had actually been a conservative, they would be falling all over themselves to pat them in the back for having a Muslim on their side.
Oh God, yeah, in a heartbeat,
And man, me and Justin got to hang out. Like, I love his AOC stance and like our communism. Like, I think Justin Reynolds and I, if we lived near each other, would be buddies IRL.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, I agree, Jacqueline. The squad has been much, much better. So, the squad's been the best they've been in the last week or so, in my view. And I agree. They've done some stuff that I haven't been a fan of. I've not been impressed with them. And so to see them now actually come out on the right side of history on this one and suddenly get their progressive co-Jones back for a minute has felt really good.
Yeah. But again, this is what I expect of a politician. I don't expect to always agree with what the politician does or even like it. But I do expect that they will at least do some things that I voted for them to do. And so, I think that's one of the biggest disappointments about AOC is for a while there, she was doing the opposite of that. Not that I voted for her or anything, but her constituents did. And I think a lot of the people that supported her are in line with our views.
Yeah, I completely agree. Besides Israel, Palestine, there's also been, and again, I mean, of course there is. We're in America. That's what happens here. There's been, of course, surprise, surprise, more outrage and problems with police violence against unarmed men of color in this country.
Well, I mean,
police
to be fair,
violence? Come on.
It is a Thursday. I mean, right? It is Thursday, right? Yeah, it's Thursday. Okay, that checks.
No, they convicted Chauvin. It's over. It's done, right?
Exactly. Yep. So, I mean,
we got a black president and we convicted Chauvin. Racism's
over. It's over.
Yep.
And there's a Cesar Chavez street and a MLK Jr. street. So we're good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so the first one, there's two that I really want to talk about. Because again, you have to pick at this point because you can't swing your arm anywhere in this country without finding a case of cops torturing and murdering people of color. The first one is Andrew Brown Jr., which this is the one that's been in the spotlight, in the news a lot lately. For anyone who doesn't know, it was in North Carolina. North Carolina squad, what's up? I hear you, Bayside Faye. North Carolina DA, basically so Andrew Brown Jr. was being served a warrant. And boy, if you see the video of them showing up, I mean, it's straight. It looks like a Klan lynch party. You literally see a handful of white cops with AR-15s in the back of a fucking pickup truck rolling in to go lynch a dude. And as soon as they show up, he sees what's going on and he tries to get the fuck out of Dodge, jumps in his car and tries to take off. They surround his car. And as he slowly drives off, making very careful sure to turn the wheels hard and not hit any cops, one of them put his hand on the hood of the car on purpose and then use that as justification that his life was in danger, even though by the time any shots were fired, he was out of the way. No cop was in danger, and they opened fire, shot him in the back of the head, murdered him, called him a motherfucker. I mean, the video footage they've even given us has been awful. And then they go and chase down the car after they've shot him in the head and he crashes into a tree because they've murdered him. They then, of course, run up to the car and they're screaming at a corpse because, they're our finest, they're heroes. Now, this came for a few reasons because, first of all, everyone saw this. There was a cell phone video from across the street. It's very grainy and blurry. You can't see a lot, but it's clear that there's something going on, and then it's not good. And then as the family demands access to the video footage, at the last second before they're going to get to see it, the cops and the DA have it redacted and edited and only give them 20 seconds of the video footage, which that's suspicious
bullshit.
As fuck. And then we finally get to see it. And again, we're seeing an edited version of this that the DA wants us to see, right? This is an edited pro-cop version, and it's horrifying, which really makes me want, did they teabag him after what happened? Because what was cut out, because what we see in the 20 seconds is terrifying.
Absolutely.
And it makes me really wonder, because I mean, it cuts off the second they get back to the car. And it really makes me wonder what they did to his body, what they said, what happened, that the DA would not let us see what happened after he was no longer a threat, because that's only going to make him look worse. Remember, this is the district attorney who's supposed to be here to prosecute crimes. Basically said that the deputies were justified. And what's really funny is in the same speech, said they were justified, did nothing wrong, and everything was right. And also that they're going to be punished and retrained.
Yep. So which one is it? Did they do something that was bad enough that requires they need to be punished and retrained? Or did they do absolutely nothing wrong and deserve no punishment whatsoever? I'm confused.
And this is why district attorneys are not your friend and not on the side of the people. They work for the police.
And why Kamala Harris is a cop. And
yes.
surprisingly, that is not the worst story about police awfulness that we have for you today.
Oh no, that's the light and fluffy one. So
that's the icing.
The one that's come out big today is Ronald Green. He had an encounter in 2019 with Louisiana State Police.
Yeah, don't be surprised if you don't know this story.
Yeah, this just came out, and by the time this airs on Monday, it'll probably have been everywhere. Everyone's gonna be like, "Well, duh, that figured the fuck out." But as of today, this is breaking news. And so in 2019, his family is sitting at home and they get a knock on the door, and the sheriff's deputies and the Louisiana State Police, the state police say that unfortunately he was in an auto accident and was killed instantly. And it was just terrible and awful. What a tragedy. We find out now, 2 years later, after a video gets released, that it was a stop. And they claim he struggled with them, and there is now a body camera video. It was obtained by the AP, and it shows what happened, where basically they just kick the shit out of him, tase him, and torture him. At one point, after they've beaten the shit out of him, they grab him by the ankles and start dragging him along the ground. And in the video, you can hear him apologizing, saying he's sorry, and begging for mercy. And then they rip his door open, taser him, and he just says, literally, his words are, I'm reading, "I'm sorry, I'm scared, officer. I'm sorry, I'm your brother, I'm scared." And the first cop just says, "Let me see your fucking hands, motherfucker." And then they drag him on the ground, put him in handcuffs. And then another officer just starts running up and kicking them and just repeatedly just keeps kicking the shit out of him as he's on the ground on the floor. And the cop who's kicking him is quoting them. And this is from the cop's video. The cop who's kicking him says, "I've got blood all over me. I hope this guy ain't got fucking AIDS," as he's kicking him to death. And that's when one of the cops grabs him by the ankles and drags him along the ground as he's basically moaning and groaning and dying. And then he was left dying face down on the ground where he died for 9 minutes. And while he was lying there with his face in the mud dying, cops do not assist him. They pull out sanitizer wipes to wash off their hands and their faces. That's what was released today in Louisiana. This was a handful of guys. This wasn't every cop, but it's just funny how every time this happens, it's always a person of color, and it's always a bunch of good old boy cops. And I'm getting really tired of seeing this. And this is why I say there are no good cops, because you either are these guys or you support these guys. If you still wake up
or you help them cover it up, because there's no way the higher ups didn't know what the fuck really happened.
Oh, they had 2 years ago.
They showed up at his house and said he got into a car accident. No, not just they had to know. We have evidence of this. They literally covered up. They showed up to his family's house and told him he died in a car accident. They covered it up immediately. They knew exactly what happened. The entire department covered it up.
And that's exactly what you're always talking about, Chris. This is where the no good cops thing comes from. You have what I'm sure right-wingers are going to call just a few bad apples. Well, the few bad apples streams all the way to the entire precinct. So is that one precinct? Like, how many examples of this do we have to have before it stops being the few bad apples, which, as we've discussed, is not even the whole fucking quote. The whole quote is "a few bad apples spoils the bunch."
Well, and it's funny. We see one fucking Target go up in flames, and a couple people with bandanas, which, by the way, every major police department has been shown to have undercover cops who are instigating most of the violence and property destruction. If you see someone in a protest causing violence and destruction, flip a coin. It's probably a cop undercover. That absolutely happens. And that's from the DOD, by the way. Homeland Security is the one who sent out memos to police departments to tell them to do this. Because in instigating violence and property damage, they can find the agitators who are most likely to join in on that and then arrest them. It's absolute entrapment. Mm-hmm. And this happens all over the country. But it's that same thing of people look at this and they're like, well, they burned down a fucking Foot Locker. America's over. And this is why all of BLM is terrible. And first of all, fuck property. I am actually for the destruction of private property, because in a capitalist system where private property and campaign donations are worth more than human life, how is destruction of property not a valid form of protest? Number one. Secondly, what we're looking at is small incidences that happen a handful of times, and entire movements are lambasted by the police. But every single time we investigate these instances of police violence, we find out that the police are always culpable and doing the most heinous crimes, beating people, killing them, planting drugs, covering up enemies, covering up evidence, intimidating witnesses. I mean, just the most mafioso type of behavior, and it's covered and excused from top to bottom. And this is why there are no good cops. Not every single cop is out there to kill and murder people of color, but every single cop is out there to back up his brothers in blue who are. And that makes you just as culpable.
They're there. They're Chris. They're there to help us. They're good cops. They're good cops. And those bad people broke the windows, Chris.
Yeah,
they broke the windows.
I'm sure he had a jaywalking ticket at some point, right? And that's the thing, is we're always told this. We're always given examples of, well, this one time he yelled at a dog when he was 5, and therefore this is justified, or he was breaking a law, as if somehow criminal activity or non-compliance is worthy of death.
Well, what their past indiscretions were have nothing to do with what their current situation is. And when a police officer or any other person use that kind of an excuse to do anything to a private citizen, it is not acceptable. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you've done. You do not deserve to have a police officer act as judge, jury, and executioner, especially if you are a police officer watching another police officer do those kinds of things to a person. That is appalling. It is appalling to see a police officer run up and kick the head of someone who is being detained on the ground. It is appalling to see someone dragged by their feet, pleading for their life. Because these are the kinds of things that happened, 200 fucking years ago. Yeah. And we're still seeing it, and it's still happening today. It hasn't changed one bit.
And if they wanted to be heroes, they would be open to this change. They would be open to seeing this. And
they don't give a fuck about being heroes. What they give a fuck about being is in power. Anybody who becomes a police officer to be in power. Yeah. That's it. That's the only reason. Anybody who tells you any fucking different is a liar. And they have convinced themselves otherwise. They believe that they are the good guys, and they're not.
Yeah, well, they wear Punisher logos and carry what they call war bags and go hunting bad guys. They still consider themselves on the right side. And it's not true. It's just, that's the end of the story. If you want to help people, you can be a firefighter, you can be an EMT, you can be a teacher, you can do all kinds of things to help people in critical situations. You can be a social worker, you can do all kinds of cool stuff. If your entire point is to wake up, strap on a gun belt, put on a badge, feel like a big boy, and then spend your entire time raging against organizations like the ACLU and BLM and supporting every single other cop, no matter what they do, you're not a fucking hero. You're a thug. You're a fucking wannabe gangster.
You're a gang member.
That's all you are. Yeah, you're a gang member, because that's what it really comes down to. Is this is an organized group of individuals who are constantly have a long history of torturing, subjugating, and again, we have a long history of police legally stealing and seizing property when it's accused of a crime. I mean, how is this not a shakedown?
It is. It absolutely is a shakedown. And it's fucking tragic that another person had to lose their life and then their family was lied to. Just flat out lied to. Oh, they died in a car accident. And what are they supposed to do? Dispute it? At that point, you don't know any different.
Yeah, police are constantly upset that, people don't like us and they don't trust us. That's all your fault. You have undermined our society's trust at every opportunity. Again, white people are now waking up to this and being surprised. Black people have never been surprised by any of this. This has been going on since day one. It's never been ceasing. We have cell phone cameras now. That's the only thing. And so if you still wake up in the morning knowing what you know now, because you could have been a good cop all your life, never saw any of this, never believed any of this, right? Never participated in it. I'm willing to believe people like that still exist. But now there's no getting away with it. You can't say you're ignorant to what's going on in this country.
No, there's no ignorance on this. You're right, Justin. They deify these people.
Well, real quick, people are going to hear this not live. Justin Reynolds wrote in, because society constantly gives them hero status. Everywhere they go, they are treated like some kind of lords.
No, and you're absolutely right. They really do deify police officers. They deify these people as if they are there to help you, but they're not. There is no obligation. The Supreme Court has said so. They are not here to protect and serve. They are here to enforce what they believe to be justified laws in any way, fashion, or form that they feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, on top of that, Jacqueline writes another really good comment here of, you know, cops have also chosen to be feared instead of respected. There are a handful of countries where the cops don't even carry guns. And that's true. First of all, I actually completely believe in disarming the police force.
I agree.
I don't think beat cops need to be armed. I would be okay with, say, having weapons in the trunk that's locked and can only be unlocked with, you know, authorization from base. And people will be like, well, what if there's an emergency or a problem or blah, blah, blah. I don't care. Danger's part of the job. Firefighters have to go in. They get some protective gear, but they don't get to walk around with fucking guns. Firefighters actually do get shot at, by the way. EMTs get shot at. Social workers get shot at. We have civil servants who help and save people all the time who don't get to walk around armed. And if you decide that you and your life is more important than anyone else, and that the idea that you need to be so protected because you're so scared that you have to have a gun all the time so you can murder anybody who might even possibly threaten you, well, then you're a coward and you shouldn't be wearing a uniform. You have no business being in any kind of armed force because you're a pussy. You're just a coward who cares only about their own life, and that's not a hero. That's not a hero.
Police officers, their first reaction to any situation that is even remotely stressful is for them to pull their gun and point it at you. That's the first thing that they do. They don't try to de-escalate the situation. They don't try to talk to you out of a position of respect. All they do is they try to intimidate you. They try to make you afraid of them so that you will comply.
Justin just wrote in, my partner just started screaming all the time about EMTs getting shot at. And it's true. EMTs go to horribly dangerous situations. They show up to crazy dangerous neighborhoods. They go into domestic violence scenarios, people shooting at each other. I mean, EMTs face insane amounts of threats. And what do? For minimum fucking wage, these guys put their lives on the line and save lives. But cops need to pull out guns to give you a parking ticket. And so what they need to do is, again, I don't think there should be no guns in policing ever, because, hey, sometimes there are mass shootings. Sometimes there are dudes with guns who want to go kill people, right? Like, there needs to be an armed response, but it doesn't need to be every single cop on the street. You know, you go to England, every cop isn't carrying a gun. There are squads of armed forces sitting around waiting to be deployed for shit to hit the fan. And when shit hits the fan, you call them up and your backup shows up within a few minutes, armed to the teeth. Fine.
Yeah. And that's what Justin just said. You know, he says yes, or a quick reaction force that is armed.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you're talking about. Every precinct should have, I don't know, 4 or 5 guys sitting around waiting for that time. Does that make it any better? I don't know. I don't know that it does.
Yeah. And no, I didn't steal your partner, Justin. Your partner's an EMT, and so therefore they deserve better than me. Don't worry about that one. But the EMTs are heroes. Seriously. They have the most thankless job that pays no money. Firefighters at least get paid money and have good benefits. But still, these are, you know, there's organizations you can join to have a decent life and save lives and care about people. And it's not ones that involve having guns. And we don't need to arm every single cop. We don't need no-knock warrants. If you've got to go up to a house and serve a warrant, you don't need to kick their fucking door open with a tank and scream at them at 2 a.m. You can apprehend them elsewhere. You can catch them when they leave the house. Put them under fucking surveillance. Like, there's ways to do this without being some ridiculous offhanded cowboy and killing people. And that's what it is they are killing people. And it is murder for hire. Again, find me a cop and I'll show you someone who carries what they call a war bag and is strapped with Punisher gear and has thin blue lines and back the badge and it hates BLM, it hates anything progressive, hates the LGCLU, hates AOC, and all it is this ultra nationalistic, usually super white boy white nationalist, but not always, but it's definitely all super hardcore America, very conservative, ultra nationalist, militarized force. And it's like, we want to talk about comparing things to the Nazis. How is this much different than the SA at this point? We have a culture that worships its own oppression. People talk about like, well, how, the Second Amendment having guns to, Chris, how are you going to take out a tank? It's like, I'm not here to fight the U.S. government, but I am worried about my neighborhood being terrorized by small forces in blue.
It doesn't matter how many guns you have and how big they are. You cannot fight the United States military.
God, no.
It doesn't work. They have bigger guns than you do.
Yeah.
There are more of them.
That's a whole different topic.
Than you are. Well, of course it is.
We have an organized government force that is terrorizing entire portions of the population. And, I mean, would either one of you even have an argument against that at this point with what we know today?
No. Of course not. As far as I'm concerned, they are as close to being an organized terrorist organization as we can have in this country, period.
Yeah. But again, for more on that, listen to our episode on policing. And trust me, I'm sure we're going to have another one in the future.
It's actually our most popular ones by far.
Yeah. And again, it's conversations we need to have again. And you know what? At some point, something's got to give. There's going to be nationwide riots, or there's going to be massive reform, which I don't believe is going to happen at all. But stranger things have happened. People win the lottery, you never know. But when something breaks, because it's going to give one way or the other, we'll be here and we'll do another episode on police brutality in America.
And it's definitely going to get worse before it gets better.
But we've been boring people for an hour. I think it's time to switch topics here. Jacqueline, you have a good question. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to address Jacqueline says the other problem is hairstylists have longer training and certification requirements than cops do.
And terrible.
Yes, they do. So my significant other girlfriend is a hairstylist. And yeah, she spent, 500 hours plus, I don't know how long. I don't know exactly how much training it is, but it's way more than a cop actually has to go through to do hair, to cut hair, to keep from burning people's scalps and things like that. No, the cops go through 6 months of training and then all of a sudden they get a gun.
Yep. Not to harp too much on it, but EMTs have way more training than cops ever do.
Teachers,
tattoo artists, teachers, everyone. It's funny how we have a paramilitary armed gangster force patrolling our streets that's sanctioned by the government, and they receive less training than just about any other trade profession there is.
Mm-hmm. It's sad. And,
two more, questions we got. Again, this is opening up to Q&A. If anyone's got one to say, we're wrapping up, but let's, we'd love to field your questions here. Justin writes back, in reality, how do we fight back? How do we actually progress? To which Jacqueline wrote, withholding labor is the only way, general strikes. And I agree. I think the two best things you can do are active street resistance. One of the things I've been loving is when the police murder somebody, the city goes and burns down the police station. And that is the best way to go, is light that bitch on fire. Because there needs to be, because burning down a Kmart doesn't solve a lot. Burning down a police station actually does. It sends a hell of a message, at least.
Yeah, burning down a Kmart doesn't do anything to the police. They still have their little bunker to go back to. But again, you burn down the bunker and they've got nowhere to work from.
Yeah. Well, and it's not like if you attack a police, because again, we haven't even really burned them down. There's been some damage sometimes. Usually people get within a block and then it gets cordoned off. But that level of scared threatdom, when scared threat, that's a word. I'm going with that. Scared threatdom is a term now, everybody. I'm coining it, and I expect dividends. But that scares the shit out of them when giant mobs show up to come burn their fucking house down, because that's what they're doing to us. And I don't even I'm not advocating you run up and shoot cops. Please do not. I am not advocating anything like that. But what I am saying, especially when it comes to like property damage, Thomas Jefferson said that when the state has screwed you over, it's time to revolt and tear it down. And when the police are killing people, it's okay to take their fucking house down. And the other one is, organized strikes. Withholding labor, absolutely. You can drive a city to its knees if everyone stops working for a few days. That actually gets shit done. Jacqueline is a comrade, and I think I just found the new homie. Justin and Jacqueline are the two that I'm getting tattoos of their faces now. Those are really good ideas, and they're legit. There are ways to, but we need to organize. And we unfortunately live in a society that tears apart leftist organizations and leftist organizing and criminalizes it.
So any last minute questions from our audience?
I was just going to say one last point on that. I mean, look what's happening with McDonald's right now. We're seeing advertisements out there for them offering employees $18 an hour. Withholding labor works. And not only does it work, it's proving everyone right. These companies can afford it. They just don't want to pay it. They're paying what we're willing to work for. The moment we stop being willing to work, they pay us what we want.
Yep. So with the time delay, you and Justin were literally talking about fast food simultaneously.
Yeah.
And Jacqueline, I would actually have to disagree with you because it doesn't. You burn down the Kmart, they collect their insurance company, and they move on. Their insurance money, they move on. Like, it really doesn't hurt their bottom line that much. Striking against the store, though, all that does is literally pull money out of their pockets. And I think striking is the best way to nail the wealthy class.
Well, and
yeah. So good.
While I don't disagree with necessarily burning down a Kmart during some sort of protest or something like that, they collect they collect the insurance money, and the neighborhood in which the Kmart is probably suffers more than the corporation does.
Yeah, because they just pull out.
Yeah, they don't build a new one, and then there's a vacant building sitting there for however long.
But I do want to put out here that we say this as a matter of practicality, that capitalism is a rigged system to harm the worker and the resident.
Correct.
Not that we place any blame on protesters or those who are acting in defense of their communities and have literally no other ways to turn because they're being murdered by the police and strangled by the banks.
Yeah.
And Justin,
Workers
we love you.
of the world unite. You have nothing left to lose but your chains.
And your healthcare. Because this is
you don't have healthcare anyway.
Exactly.
So
I'm just a working American. Why would I have healthcare?
I'm a working American. I have healthcare. I might lose my healthcare.
Yeah, you're
one of the privileged few, my friend.
I know, which is sad. Sad.
That's a topic we'll do a different day. But guys, thanks for coming to this live. You know, it's funny. We were joking. We're like, oh, it's going to be us and like two people. So thank you. You guys are. I mean, it mostly was. I mean, Jacqueline and Justin were just fantastic. So thanks for being here with us. We'll do one of these again.
Give some love to Mary Riley. She's been here.
Mary Riley,
Mary Riley's the OG. She's been here. She was comment one. Mary Riley already knows her place in my heart. But no, we love you guys. Everyone listening, everyone commenting, everyone who will be listening to this on Monday. Thanks for being here. We love it. Thanks for joining us on this one. We are going to do another one in the future. We'll probably do another Discord hangout too at some point. We'd love doing live crap where we actually get to talk to you guys. It's the most fun part of this, hands down.
100%.
Someone's got to keep Kay and Matt awake while I go on history lectures.
Yeah. But with that said, Chris, you want to count us out?
Yeah, let's get out of here. So thank you again. We love y'all, and this will be the recording on Monday, which will be slightly cleaned up. And once you hear that, you'll be able to, oh my God, wow, Reverend Dr. K really makes these guys sound a lot smarter than they are. It's amazing. And you'll get to hear that difference. And of course, we'll be back every single Monday, and we will do this again sometime in the near future. Always shoot us shout outs on Twitter, on Instagram, email us if you have any questions, anything you ever want to cover. We would love to do another Q&A episode as well, but we'll be here again, and we're always here. Thank you for joining us. We love you, and until then, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and remember, the revolution is you.